The Acolyte's 6th episode, titled Teach/Corrupt, was a completely different vibe from last week's Bloodbath. Not nearly as much action, but definitely a bridge to what's on the way, and it had some great things to say about the Force, and particularly the dark side. Let's dive in. First, I just want to talk about the title. Now that the sisters are separated again, we're going back to the dual titles. The first 2 episodes were called Lost/Found and Revenge/Justice. I think they're formatted to be about May and then Osha, so this title suggests that the episode will be about Sol teaching May and Qimir corrupting Osha. After losing 2 major characters in episode 5, it's nice to return to some normalcy by having Osha wake up suddenly, gasping for breath again. Jokes aside, I do think that was a fun mirror of her very first scene. She's in a cave on an unknown planet, but that looks so much like Octo. We don't see any porgs, which would have been the major giveaway, but we do see a couple of tiny critters in the rocks, and they look like teeny tiny versions of the Thalassiren, the creature that Luke milks in The Last Jedi. That's stretching things a bit, so I'm not willing to say it's definitely Octo quite yet, and I have another possible planet I'll bring up later. Obviously, there is more than one ocean planet in the galaxy, the same way there are apparently dozens of desert planets, but those islands and those rock formations look deliberately close to what we saw in the sequel trilogy. And I kinda love the idea that Octo may have been lost to the Jedi, but the Sith held on to its location. After all, the Sith were created as an offshoot of the Jedi, so all Sith can connect their roots back to Octo. Jumping over to Kofar with May, I'm glad we immediately saw Sol attempting to call Coruscant and tell them what happened, but the communications are conveniently garbled. So still no living Jedi in this era outside of Sol has heard the word Sith. We also see him understandably losing his cool in a moment alone while he attempts to reset the transceiver. Meanwhile, Basil tries his little heart out to get Pip powered back up. I definitely think the little Tynan and the droid know May is an imposter, and they have to work together to fill Sol in. Swapping to Osha, Qimir lures her out to a pool and strips down and obviously makes himself as absolutely vulnerable as possible. I like that she approaches him with one of May's knives, the exact same way May approached Sol, each of them considering killing their sister's master. But the second Osha picks up Qimir's lightsaber, he starts needling at the pain inside of her. Since episode 1, I've talked about how the Sith can take genuine grief and turn it into something much worse. May's pain was about the loss of her family and her sister, but Osha's pain is rooted in failing to become a Jedi, as we learn later. Qimir sees that and says, "Oh, doesn't it feel good to hold a lightsaber again? Doesn't it feel good to have someone training you again? Wouldn't it be nice to have another chance?" And then he wastes zero time getting her to question things, and I think he starts well with a good philosophical question that doesn't have an easy answer. What's the difference between killing him on the battlefield versus killing him here and now, unarmed, vulnerable, and literally naked? Does he deserve death any less now, just a few hours later? Osha, aren't these pesky rules just a nuisance? He notes that she seems more concerned with Sol's well-being than May's, and comments on the special relationship between master and pupil, which is obviously where he wants this to go. I think it's interesting that he's starting their relationship with more honesty than he did with May. He was kind of forced into showing Osha his face under the mask, but still. I should say he is at least pretending to be more honest. The pool was a setup. He wanted her there. He tells her she's free to go, but only if she makes a dangerous swim out to the ship. The Sith like to take the truth and twist it and willfully misinterpret it to suit their needs. And to be fair, Sol has been doing the same thing. He hasn't been honest with Osha or the Jedi Order about whatever happened on Bryndock, but to his credit, he claims he is going to fess up and make things right. But right when he says that, they lose all power on the ship. That's getting kind of old. 3 episodes in a row of Sol being on the verge of telling the truth, and then something interrupts his confession. But where we do make some headway is on Coruscant and the larger stakes for the Jedi Order and some of those political enemies we've heard about. Apparently, an ambitious senator is pushing to have some kind of external review of the Jedi. Vernestra talks to another senator who says that it's no cause for alarm because the Jedi have always been transparent with the Senate. In other words, they've always been honest with the Senate. But if some terrible incident were to come to light where the Jedi did something bad on a planet like, say, Bryndock, and it was was revealed that they covered it all up and lied about it, well, that just might make the Senate take more oversight of the Order, make them more tangled up in galactic politics and less able to operate on their own. I like this a lot. It's a more tangible threat than Vernestra's vague mention of political enemies of the Jedi. And off the heels of that holo call, Vernestra is informed of the casualties on Kofar, and she prepares to head out. Qimir tells Osha he was a Jedi once, long ago. I wouldn't have guessed that, and I'm not sure I trust him. It seems unlikely, but plausible. He would have had to have been a youngling that maybe didn't make it into becoming a Padawan. He later claims he was discarded, so that could be his warped view of the truth. Osha warns him that Sol will find her thanks to his strength in the Force, but Qimir corrects her and says her master can find her because of her strength, not his. That I do think is true. Sol seems like he's pretty gifted in sensing people. He felt Torben and Kelnaka's deaths, but he was also able to get straight to Osha on Karlak after her ship crashed. Maybe that's due to her strength in the Force. On Sol's ship, May attempts to get the power back on, and she is cutely assaulted by Basil and Pip. All this business on the ship was confusing to me. Like, did Basil cut the power? And if so, why? Wouldn't it be simpler to play charades with Sol? This was the one storyline of the episode that felt clunky and unclear to me, but it does end with May resetting Pip to his factory settings, which is terrible. I hope Osha has a backup somewhere for his real memories. She also plops his head on any old Pip body, not the one Osha personalized with stickers. The droid is noticeably different, and I think that's what tips Sol off to May's deception. Maybe he already knew or had suspicions, but I like the idea that May's disregard for this little droid, who most people would disregard, is something that Osha would never do, and that's what gets her caught. Back with Osha, her next scene with Qimir was probably my favorite of the episode. She tells Qimir that without continued practice, Jedi training fades over time, but Qimir says the Jedi way isn't the only way to access the Force. He claims that giving into anger, fear, loss, and desire will allow you to tap back into the Force. He shrugs off the fact that it's the dark side, saying it's only semantics. If the power itself is the only thing important to you, what does it matter how you achieve it? I love this exploration into the dark side and the light, because what is the dark side in the real world sense? It's letting your fear, anger, and aggression control your actions. We all feel those emotions probably on a daily basis. If you're watching YouTube, I can pretty much guarantee that's true. Okay, so what is the light side? It's allowing yourself to feel your fear and anger, acknowledging them, and allowing them to pass through you, not allowing them to take control of what you say or do. That takes practice. That takes effort. It's not easy to build up and maintain that level of control. It can fade away if you don't keep trying. But we will never be rid of our fear or anger. They will be with us until the day we die, and we don't need to practice feeling them. Easily they flow, quick to join you in a fight, as Yoda said. So the idea that Qimir is preying on this young woman who thought her time with power was over, and he's like, no, you can still have power. You won't have it the way you thought you would, but who cares? I think that's brilliant. She pushes back, growing angry about the deaths of Yord and Jeki, and once again Qimir has a twisted and wrong answer for everything. He says Yord was ready to arrest her for a crime she didn't commit. Yes, he did that in episode 1 with limited and confusing knowledge, but then he was also the one to clear her name for Torben's murder right away. Qimir says Osha's friendship with Jeki would have been hollow and one-sided, but that's just straight bullcrap. That's just playing on Osha's fears, but there's no way to know the truth, and Qimir robbed Jeki and Osha of ever finding out what their future would have held. Finally, he pushes her to kill him, but in reality, he wants her to face the pain in her past, the pain of not becoming a Jedi. Over the course of the season, she has said it was her decision to walk away, and it was the hardest thing she's ever done, and then she worked a dangerous job and tried to make the best of it, and it wasn't Sol's fault she couldn't cut it, she just couldn't get over what happened, which she doesn't even have the full picture of. Maybe she did walk away of her own accord, but we do know Master Indara recommended her training be discontinued. I think the tragedy here is that if she had the whole honest picture of what happened on Brindok, maybe she could have had some closure. Maybe she could have moved past the loss and become a Jedi, but Sol robbed her of that possibility too. Qimir claims this loss is who she is, but I believe Jeki's last words to Osha: we are not defined by what we lose, we're defined by what we survive. But Osha deserves to know the truth of what she survived. Qimir pushes her until she ignites that red lightsaber and throws him against the rock wall, which is absolutely a symbol of corruption in Star Wars. It's not like she's done anything unforgivable, but a red lightsaber in anyone's hand is almost always a metaphor. Back on Coruscant, Vernestra throws on some mission robes and looks uncomfortable as she prepares to head to the Outer Rim. It definitely gives off a vibe that she hasn't been on a mission in a while, and she also says she finds hyperspace unsettling. They played that off well as a joke in the episode, but young Vernestra Rwoh was known for having visions when she traveled in hyperspace. Not all the time, but some of the time she would see things or have conversations with dead people. I thought that was an excellent little callback to the books. She is also very insistent that she go on the mission, which gives me pause. I'll come back to that later. For now, she arrives at Kofar just as Sol jumps into hyperspace with an unconscious May. They investigate the dead Jedi, and Vernestra kills an Umbra Moth with her light whip, which is another callback to the books. That is the weapon she made as a Padawan and then adapted as a Jedi Knight, and I hope we get to see it in a fight in a future episode. She is clearly concerned about all the lightsaber-inflicted deaths, and Sol is tentatively accused to have fallen to the dark side. That does not bode well for his future. Back in the cave, Qimir repairs his helmet and shows Osha a scar on his back that we've now seen twice. He claims it was given to him by someone who threw him away, but he doesn't confirm it was his Jedi Master. I'm taking his silence to mean his Sith Master. He tells Osha that what he wants is the power of two, which is a good echo of part of the witch's chant, but I think he wants more. For all his talk about wanting a student or a pupil, I think it's for selfish reasons. What he wants is more power, his master's power. If he is the Sith apprentice, he wants to train someone to help him kill his master, just like Dooku did with Asajj Ventress or Vader tried to do with Luke. He also confirms that his helmet is made of cortosis, as we all thought, and works as a sensory deprivation chamber. If you put it on, it's just you and the Force in there, and whatever you bring with you, which is a great callback to The Empire Strikes Back. When Luke heads to the dark side cave on Dagobah, he asks what's inside, and Yoda says, only what you bring with you. In Luke's case, and I think in Osha's, that would translate to your deepest, darkest fears. When she puts it on, I think she's gonna see some pretty intense stuff. Maybe she'll see more of what happened on Bryndock, maybe she'll link minds with May while Sol tells her the story. Whatever happens, I don't think she'll come out of it a happier person. That's where the episode leaves us, with Osha wearing the helmet and May about to hear Sol's story. Finally! I believe episode 7 will be another flashback episode where we see the Jedi's point of view. I started this series off thinking the first 2 episodes were okay. Torben drinking that poison hooked me on the mystery. Episode 3 had me intrigued and wanting to know the other half of that story. I have liked the Acolyte more and more every episode, but I really do think everything hangs on episode 7. We've been teased with this mystery so much. I respect that this series hasn't dragged out the Jedi accusing Osha of murder or Qimir's identity. They weren't treated like big twists, but the truth of Bryndock has. I have no reason to think it'll be disappointing. I'm just saying I think and hope the truth will be a big deal, and I'm excited to see it. Okay, before wrapping up, let's talk about 2 theories. First, I said the unknown planet might not be Ahch-To, and I had another theory. The planet Baldimnik was an ocean planet covered in rocky islands. It was rich in cortosis and also happened to be where Darth Plagueis murdered his master Darth Tenebrous. We see a cortosis vein in the cave in the episode, so maybe there is a link there. I think it's possible, but I also think that if it's not Ahch-To, there could have been some effort to make the planet feel more distinct. The unknown planet's similarities to Ahch-To seem very deliberate. For my second theory, we've got to talk about Vernestra. A couple weeks ago in our livestream after show, we talked about how so many mystery thriller movies revealed that the big bad was actually the helpful mentor character all along. Minority Report, Mission Impossible, Captain America Winter Soldier, Hot Fuzz. It happens a lot, and Vernestra is kind of filling that role. I was joking when I first said it, but I'm starting to take it more seriously. Has she been reluctantly helpful to Sol, or has she been manipulating him, sending him on missions that she dangled in front of him? She wants to keep everything quiet and not involve the Jedi Council, but maybe that's not just for political reasons. She doesn't join the mission until an entire team is wiped out. Maybe that's because she realized her apprentice is running around making a lot of noise. She's got a light whip, and in the books, when she adapted her weapon, she was worried people wouldn't like it because it had connections to the dark side. And Qimir's scar sure looks unique. In this episode, she whispers something to tip the scales to herself, which is a callback to a previous line, but it could also be her realizing that her apprentice is trying to get help. Something or someone to tip the scales in his favor to take her down. And a while back, Daphne Keane did an interview where she said the Acolyte would explain how the Sith infiltrated the Jedi. I thought that would be more metaphorical, but maybe it's not. I really hope I'm wrong for several reasons. First, I've got a bigger connection to her than most people watching the show, and I'm sure any High Republic book readers would agree. I don't want to see a young, talented Jedi Knight become a Sith hiding within the Jedi. That seems like a far cry from Vernestra in the books. Of course, a lot can happen in 100 years, and I also don't know how her story will end in the books. The last few could send her on a dark trajectory, but if that's what's going to happen, I don't want the show to spoil the books. So my hope is that I'm making mountains out of molehills. I had the idea in my head and now I keep seeing ways that it could be true. Maybe they're intentionally throwing clues out towards Vernestra just to keep us guessing. I don't know. It's an idea I had. It's one I don't want to be true, but I'm mentally preparing myself just in case. If it is true and it's executed well, then I'll be bummed about the final High Republic books having like a storm cloud hanging over them, but I'll get over it. Anyway, I should wrap it up. I thought this was a great episode, so let me know what you thought of Teach/Corrupt in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.